going to start with our disassembly. We're going to start with the seat. It's got a tour pack. The easiest thing to do here is lift our tour pack lid. It's going to give us a little bit easier access. Get this flap out of our way. This one's nice. It is a thumb screw style, so don't need any tools. It just comes off. If you have the standard, which is the Phillips, simple number 3 screwdriver, gets you right in there. Take that screw out, and we're good to lift the seat. We're going to lift up in the back, slide this seat back, and we are now disconnected. If we have a heated seat, there'll be a wire here. There's usually a 4-pin connector. Just undo that, and now the seat is free of the bike. So our next step, we're going to go ahead and remove the tank. To get this tank done, we need to get basically all the wires or lines on the tank. We need to make sure they're disconnected. This is an overflow. It should just pull straight up and out. If for some reason it's tight, you come down here by your foot peg, there may be a zip tie down in here that needs to be cut to free that line to come back up. Once we get that, we come here. We're going to disconnect these two, both the black and the white one. They come out here. Now that's going to move with the tank, as well as this one here. So we got those three. The only thing left here is this. This is just kind of a pressure fitting. Take that loose. Now our tank's loose of any wires. We then come down to these 2 bolts. So your Torx bit, T40. Same thing, other side. Now, the back of our tank is disconnected, and we can move up to our front bolts. Now that we got the back side undone, we come up to the front, right in here. Typically, these covers are on. They're very simple. Just pull it off. Exposes our bolt. Again, it's a T40, or if you don't have Torx, it is a 1/2-inch socket that will take that off. Come in here, just being real careful with your tank. And bolt is out. So now we're going to basically repeat the process. We're going to take our cap off here, expose our bolt on this side. Again, T40 or 1/2-inch. We are pretty much free except for our gas connection. So right here is our gas line connection. This works pretty much. You may have to kind of just give it a spin to loosen it up if it's been there for a little bit, but basically lift up, this will pop right out. Get a little bit of fuel, but then once the initial disconnect, have no leaking. Now the tank is completely free and can be lifted off the bike. So now that we got all the bolts out, we got our connections loose here, we're actually just going to lift the tank off. I typically grab it here, kind of back just a little bit, so you can get your hand in here. And boom, the tank is free. So our seat's off, our tank's off. Now we need to get our fairing and windshield off. For that, we have 2 screws on each side. These are 1/8-inch Allen. They typically are going to be either the 1/8-inch Allen, a T25, or a Phillips, depending on what attachment and trim you have. So we have these. Then we come over to our side here on the turn signal on these road glides. We have 1 screw in the back. So we have the 3/16 Allen, one of those on each side. Those will come out. The next one, we got our vent wing here. This bottom T25 is what we need to remove to get the fairing off. You can leave this one in place, which leaves this wing in place for you. So it's just the bottom one. Then after that, there is a T25 screw behind this vent. In removing this vent, if you want to remove it from here, it is a lift from the inside out. There's a tab here that if you pry from here, you'll break that tab. But once we get the fairing off, there's an easier way to get this screen out, and I'll show you that once we get to that point. We just want to take this bottom T25 out. Leave this one in place, that way the wing stays on our inner fairing. So bottom T25 here, and then again the screw behind the speaker grill. those 4 screws out, the windshield literally just lifts right off. This vent shade is literally held on with press clips. So kind of get under here, pull up and out, done deal. Our 3/16 and the turn signal will stay there. It'll come off with the fairing. Now our 3/16 and that's out. We're going to do our T25, and again, this is on just the bottom one. That loosens it up from the fairing, but then our vent shade stays on. All right, and the same thing, other side. Let's take this little T25 out. And we've got 2 more screws to do, but to get this, once we get those screws, this fairing comes loose. So, you'll notice here where we're zip tied in, we need to unconnect these 2, disconnect them, because this wiring runs down to the turn signal, so this will allow that all to come off with the fairing. Once that's done, we're ready to access these, which goes into our grill. You got 2 more bolts holding this on. They are behind these grills. These grills are basically put into place. You have 2 pressure clips here and a fixed pin or clip on this side. So we don't want to lift from this side. So if we bring our hand in here, give a slight pressure out, it'll usually give us that purchase point to then get that grill up. Once we those up, so here's the grill. We have our pressure clips, and this is a fixed pin here. So if you pry from the outside, you'll end up breaking this clip, and the grill won't sit back into place when you go to reinstall it. Once we get that out, here is our T25 screw that we need to take out. Same thing on this side. I'm bringing my hand in the back side, giving a little pressure out. Lets me get a finger in there, and the grill's out of our way. And then there's our screw. Now, when doing this, once we take these 2 screws out, this fairing is free. So I tend to like to be in front of it, kind of with my body against the fairing here, and then I can reach over, take this screw out, come back over to the other side here, and take that screw out. We are now completely loose, and this fairing will just slide right off. So now we need to get our headlight out. First thing there, we want to get this out of our way. Use just a little bit of pressure, and that is out of our way. We will not be reusing this bracket. Bring a little screwdriver, kind of pry up on that, push forward, that comes right undone. And basically, see that thing is there? Kind of lift that up and then slide that forward, undone. Same thing with this one. Lift forward, work this way back. So, now that we got this and that bracket out of our way, again, this is a 3/16. If you follow these 2 fins, it'll take you right to the bolts. So you have one there. There's that. There's those 2 little fins. Takes you right to the bolt in here. All right, so now we got our top 2. We're going to come down to our bottom 2. Again, 3/16. And our headlight will come right out of the way. And we just got to disconnect that. And our headlight is out. So now we want to get our pods off. So first thing we want to do is disconnect everything going to the pod. So we have our GPS antenna over here. Has a little clip on the bottom. So basically what I'm doing is my finger on that little clip, and then you just kind of work this loose. So this wire comes out. There's one zip tie. We're just going to go ahead and cut that. Now, our GPS antenna will stay with the pod. That way we don't have to mess with this double-sided tape. We have this little plastic press clip here that we want to take loose from the pod. Just kind of gently pry that one out. And then we're going to come down here, disconnect our speaker connection. Now all the wires connecting the pod are disconnected. Now we just have to worry about the screws. there are 5 3/16. We have 2 at the top, and then we have 3 kind of rotate around this bottom side. I like to start with these bottom ones. We'll take them out. One, two, three. Now, when taking this one out, I can literally kind of put my side of my chest on it and control this pod as we take it loose. Now we got all 5 out. The pod is free and can be removed from the bike. Now we're basically going to repeat the process on the other pod. We don't have an antenna to work with. This metal plate is typically where they do the Sirius. If you have a Sirius or XM, that goes here, but it's just a magnet. So literally you can just pop it off. It's not a matter of we're messing with double-sided tape. So we need to get this plastic pressure clip loose from the pod. But that takes that loose. Then we need to undo our speaker. Now that's undone, so now we can go to the same 5 bolts that we had on the other side. So we got the same 5 bolts. We have the 2 up top, and we have the 3 running around the bottom. Again, I like to start with the bottom. So now that those 3 are done, we can come up and get our top 2. Again, I kind of put my hip against this, keeps that pod from falling all the way out and onto the ground. That's up. We are now loose and apart. Pod is off the bike. We're almost done with basically our deconstruction so we can actually start putting our new sound system in. We want to take our 3/16 and we want to back these radio bolts out. The reason is they go through this plate and will actually prevent us from being able to get our amp bracket all the way up and into place. So if we take them loose, they are now out of our way. We don't necessarily need to take the radio completely out. But if you wanted to, once those 4 bolts, it's 2 connections and this connection here. You take those loose, the radio will literally come out of the bike. I don't typically take it all the way out. I kind of like to leave it sit here. It's one less thing to put on another table. So we got those loose. Now we need to get this module out of our way. So first, the wires. We disconnect that there. There's that portion of it. Then we need a 3/8 to take these 2 screws loose. Now, that is out of our way. So now we've got everything apart. We're actually ready to start installing some stuff. So here's our power wire. It's going to power our amp. First thing we want to do is actually de-pin this. So if you take that clip right there, pull that up, we grab this, give it a little twist and pull, and they're going to come right out. So now with that done, and I like to tape these off, just because as we're running them through the front fairing, it'll help protect the pins from getting damaged or getting caught up and pulling one of the existing wires in there as well. So just kind of simple electrical tape, does not matter. So now we're kind of ready to fish that through. We're going to run our power wire and our rear main, get it from the front fairing to the back. We've already got the tank off, so we're going to use this wire trough to house our wiring. Cut our tape here, one here, one here, and then clip this zip tie. Now for the trough itself, it just has little clips. So kind of press in, kind of wiggle back and forth, they'll come loose. Make sure our tape didn't. When you get to this bundle here, it's just a little clip, kind of lift up on this, and this will slide right out of the way. Then again, now we're back to the back and forth. and our trough is out of the way. So we're going to use this wire trough to house our power wire and our rear main. Now, for the sake of the video and being able to tell our wires apart from the other, I have our power wire is wrapped in red tape and our rear main is wrapped in blue. And like I said, that yours will come black. That is just so you can identify it. Now, what we want to do is we want to take this stock Harley harness here, kind of pull it out, fish our wire in behind that. Okay, so that should be up into our fairing. While we are here, let's go ahead, do the same thing with the rear main. Okay, so that kind of gets those up and into that front fairing. Now we're going to take this. I want to stay as behind this factory wire as possible and bring this down this trough till we get to our battery box. Okay? Now, when we get down here, I still need to pull some excess to the front. So what we want this to be from the fuse block to where we enter the trough, 6 to 8 inches, somewhere in there. That gives us enough slack that if we ever need to check this fuse, we'll be able to get it up above the battery, and you'll actually be able to change that fuse out. Our rear main, what we want back here is we want enough to come over to, we're going to route this blue one. It's our rear main. This is basically going to give us power to the back end of the bike if we decide to add tour pack lids or cut mid-bass cut in. So we want this to be able to come over to the side, right about there. Because once we get to this point, we're actually going to tuck this connection in behind the battery. So got that there, that's enough slack. That gives us enough wire on the back side. We've done enough of these that we know that's going to give us enough inside the fairing to reach where we need to make the connection. So once we get to this point, we can actually put our cover back on, which will help hold this wire because it's gonna, that'll help hold the wire in place. So basically, they said the red is our power wire, the blue is our rear main. Good 6 to 8 inches from the fuse to where it enters the trough. On our rear main, 16 inches, somewhere in there. Like I said, basically, if you just kind of take it over to your frame side and make sure we got enough to get back behind the battery box. And that gives us plenty up front to make all our connections there. So now we can put this back on. We want to make sure all the existing wiring and all is not going to be pinched or crimped. Easiest to start up here at the top. If you just, almost the way we took it off in reverse fashion, kind of work it back and forth. Okay, this will slide right back in here. The reason I kind of tucked the tape in the middle is because we still have something to adhere that to. There. All right, so our trough is back on. That's back in place. We're good. The zip tie that was here, basically, we're just going to kind of lift up on that trough, feed this through till it comes to the other side. Flush cuts, flush cut our excess, and now we're back just like it was. Except we now have our power and our rear main. We've already run that. We have as much excess as we need. We're just going to pull our excess through here. We want to come through this big hole. So when you come up here after running that, it may be tucked down in here, but very easy to find your sides, pull it up here. After I run the power wire, I like to always, immediately after getting it in place, we've got the trough cover back on. Let's come up here and let's repin this connection. So visual check, we didn't do any damage to our pins. Here's the clip we took out. We're still up. Negative to the outside. Just going to put these in, kind of a twist and firmly push in, and then clip that back down. It's that simple. Now, what we're looking for here is with this clip, we want a nice tight seam here. If we have a little bit of bubble, that means something hasn't got that thing exactly locked into place correctly. So we need to lift it up, kind of wiggle and push till we get this to seat nicely here. Once that's done, our positive and negative are separate, so we can go back to our battery tray and actually hook the cable to the power and finish up back there. Now we have got our power wire repinned up front, so we're not going to cause any sparks or blow any fuses. We need to get access to our battery. So these two that we disconnected to do the back, they're just plastic clips. So just a good even pull on the top and they will come loose. This here, we slide back and it's loose. So we get that out of our way. This one here, simple finger clip, that is out of our way. Now we need to move the ECM itself. So very simple, it's just pressure clip, stays in place. Just put that around it so we don't scratch any paint of our side cover. So now we've got the ECM tray, doesn't have any of that connections on it. So we have a T40 here and one here. Remove those two. The ECM tray, kind of lift from the back, push forward, and then lift up. If you look right here, that's where this metal clip is. So like I said, when I push forward and we're pushing forward, lift up in the back and push forward, we're just trying to clear this metal clip. So now we've got access to our battery. Right. Now we're going to we'll start with our power wire. Let's just kind of bring it under this feed here. And we're going to take and put it there's a nice little cavity almost underneath this trough for that. Now we're ready to connect to the battery. If you are unsure if your bike has an actual audible alarm or not, before you untook the battery, turn the bike on. By turning the bike on, the alarm will not sound when we disconnect the battery. Okay? Number 3 screwdriver. We're going to take this screw loose. Now we're going to hook up our positive. This bike has very few add-ons, so we don't have any extra stuff to the battery. If we did, we want our power wire to be the first thing coming after this Harley connection. We want to be closest to the battery. Other than your stock Harley stuff, we are going to draw more power than any of your other add-ons. So, put us down there. Get our screw started. Notice how I kept it in line straight. So there is our positive. I'll slide this kind of out of the way for the purpose of getting better video. And we're going to do the same thing on the negative. Number 3, redo this here. Always connect it to the negative of the battery. Harley does have a ground spot down here. It is much harder to get to. This is much easier. And we know we are grounded well. And again, we want to be the first thing coming off. That's a Harley connection. And again, straight. It'll allow that ECM tray to sit down nice and flush. So we're good and tight, good and tight. Power wire is now live. Our blue wire here, this is our rear main. Any system, if you're just even getting just a 2-speaker system, we supply you with a rear main. That way we are running the audio signal to underneath your seat. So down the road, if you decide to add tour pack lids, or you don't have a tour pack and you're going to add a tour pack, we have the signal already to the back end of the bike, makes it much easier to do the add-on, okay? So this comes out of the trough. We want to go under this Harley connection here, and we are going to stay to the side, and we are going to tuck that right behind the battery, just like that. So that way it's there. With that being done, we can now put our ECM tray back. So basically, just same procedure, just opposite. So we're gonna kind of come to the front, get that hooked around that little metal pin, and then see by coming straight, our ECM tray sits nice and flat, good to go. Put our T40s back in place. Connect that. Let's get our key fob sensor. See the back of this little groove here? See this little groove on the ECM tray? That's where that goes. So that sits there. That's back. If these two get moved, Harley's really cool. Black, gray, okay? Gray one goes on the gray, black one goes on the black. That is done. Set your ECM back in there. Once we put the tank back on, that seat's ready to go. We are connected in the back. So we now have our battery hooked up. We got our ECM tray back on, our trough covers in. So we're basically ready to go with starting installing our amp and get our wire management done. So here we've got our road glide bracket and our amp. Turn this over. Notice our serial number. Notice a nice little hole in the bracket. They line up. This is for a reason. In your amp box, you will find these screws to hold the amp in place. What we want to do is we want to just get all four of these started. What we want to do is we want to center this amp in this dimension as best we can. You notice this isn't centered, so we're going to want to be this way. Now we can tighten this up. This is going to go into the bike like this. So these are going to be out at the front. These connections are going to be underneath. So with that in mind, they do a great job of taping and protecting our wires. But before we put the amp in place, if we peel back one side, and it doesn't really make a difference which, right? But now that I can see this, I can see the green and the purple. The green and the purple are for our rear speakers. So when I go to connect this to our T-harness, I know which one's rear, which obviously then makes this one front. But if you get and kind of peel this back a little bit where you can see it, it will save you headache later when you go to hook the T-harness up. So now we know our fronts are the white and gray, rears are green and purple. Now we can see that'll make it much easier to connect our T-harness in when we get to that side of it. In our amp bracket box come the amp bracket screws. I personally advise, while you have it out, just kind of run these through there to make sure we don't have any paint buildup in the threads here, and kind of get that out of our way before we have it in place. All right, so we know that those all work. Now we're ready to put it in the bike. We now have our amp mounted to our bracket. We can get our amp bracket in place. You can read the sounds, kind of the arrow pointing forward. So basically the square end is going to the back. So kind of just slide this up into place. Just a little bit of a wiggle. Get that up and into place. Now we have 2 holes on each side. So we're going to bring the supplied bolts, come over to this side, line them up and get that screw started. Keep these loose until we get all 4 screws into place. Come to this back hole, and I know it's hard to see with my hands in place, but there you have it. So those are started. Like I said, we don't want to tighten those down until we get all 4 screws in place. All right, so now we got all 4 in. We can tighten them up. And these are nice in that they have the Phillips. If you don't use the screw gun with the Phillips, it's a 10 millimeter. Amp in place. We now have our amp in place. So we're ready to run our T-harness and basically all our wiring. So we're going to start that by removing stock factory harness. Little press right there lets this unlock and this piece comes out. We have our T-harness. I've got this wrapped in the yellow electrical tape just so it's a better visual as to where I'm routing things and how. Yours will obviously come all black. This new one will plug in. Our T-harness will plug into the back of the radio. That will clip there. This is our remote turn on if we are doing a system without a DSP. Because this is what's going to basically tell our amp that it's okay to turn on. So we're going to quickly kind of run this in this gap between the amp and the bracket. Bring it through. There's a hole in the side, just like this. On this side, so we're going to bring this through. So we bring it in here, bring it out this hole. Once we get that run, we're going to bring it up in between our gauge and our radio. And here is the accessories plug on your Harley. It has a blank in there to basically just occupy the space. Remove the blank, plug our remote turn on in. And we have already provided you with another spare. So if you have heated grips or anything else that you need an accessories plug for, you still have one available to you. Now, we got that done. We're going to take the other side of our T-harness. Here's the connection that was on our radio. We're going to plug it in and lock it into place. This wire here is our headlight. I typically just like to bring this up and kind of tuck it right here on that bracket. It keeps it out of the way, and I don't end up mistakenly zip tying it in my wire management, and then I have trouble finding it later when we're ready to hook up the headlight. We want this to basically fit just like this. So we're going to run a zip tie here. Kind of come around these two. And put that there. That kind of holds that and keeps it in place for me. We have one lead coming off that has 4 ends. These are our outputs. These are what is going to take the signal from the amp and supply it to our speakers. We have one that has basically 3. So these are our inputs and they're labeled rear amp input, front amp input. So our front speakers, rear speakers. And then this is the other end of our remote turn on. This is going to connect to the power wire. This blank plug here is only used if we're putting a DSP in the system, which majority of our systems do. But what we want to do here is we want to take all 3 of these, tuck them back up under here, just like this. The connection here with our inputs, if you go back, there's a 16-pin connector here. If we are not running a DSP, this stays plugged in just like this. If we are running the DSP, this is going to come loose. And we're going to plug this into the other side of our DSP, which I'll show you in a minute. This connection will stay unpopulated. So we bring this here. And where we're wanting to do is we're wanting to bring these wires to up under here. So we're going to basically follow the same path we did with the original remote turn on. We just want to stay above this bolt. We want to make sure that everything we run through here will not get pinched between this bolt because this is where our headlight attaches to. So our headlight's going to attach here. We want to make sure that all this is up here. This is our rear input and our front input. I like to zip tie these together, a couple inches back, but run a zip tie around those. Get a set of decent flush cuts. Cut that nice and flush. So here, rear amp input. If you notice, basically the lever that locks it, there's the little tab that it locks on. These will only plug in one way. You shouldn't have to fight them. Just make sure they're lined up. Boom, press them into place. Now we're going to put our fronts. Boom, press them into place. Now, we're going to take this and we're going to tuck it under here the same way. The reason I kind of zip tie that together, that gets that. So now we're going to bring this and basically follow these wires the exact same way. All this gets everything to down into this area, okay? Now that we've got that, we want to take our harness here. We want to run a zip tie, capturing everything that we just ran across the top. So all these wires, we're going to capture them right here. And there we go. So by capturing those wires, we're now holding them up tight. We don't have to worry about them falling and getting in this pinch point right here. That's out of the way. So let's start with our power connection. Here's our power wire that ran from the battery up to the front. This little tab here plugs in to our remote turn on. So this is what is going to tell our amp that we've turned the bike on and it's okay for the amp to turn on. This connection here, when you look under here on the back side of that amp, there is the matching 3-pin connector. Got a little locking tab up top which connects to this. So we're just going to plug this in. Boom, we're plugged in. Now, what we want to do is I want to take this connection, feed a little excess kind of back up in here so we're not pulling tight on it, right? Like, here's our Harley feed. Here's our little bit of excess. We're going to fold that and we want to follow this wire. Going to do the exact same thing with the remote turn on. Now, there's our power button. That's a remote turn on, power wire, and this stock Harley bundle, right? It's kind of hard to see because for me to do this and get my hands in here definitely blocks view. But we'll take one zip tie, make sure we have the Harley bundle captured, our power wire, and the remote turn on wire. And there we go. So, flush cuts. There that is. So our power wire is handled. These two are going to go to our DSP connection. So before we get to that, that DSP is going to be the last thing we put into place. When we look at our outputs, we read them. We have a front output, 4-pin, basically the male side. Rear output. Then we have a front add-on. So if we were to add lowers, speakers in our lowers, that's where we would connect that harness to. A rear add-on, so if we were to add lid speakers or whatnot, that's where we would run that harness to. So this, right, we ran a rear main, that's going to be our rear add-on. So we can go ahead and plug our rear main into our rear add-on right here. Okay? Don't have lowers, so we don't have to worry about this one. But if we decide to add them later, we have that access. Now, kind of reach up in here, find our two output wires. Remember how I told you to kind of strip them back where you can see the colors? White and gray is for our fronts. So there is our white and gray connection. I'll try and leave this pot out. So I don't know if you how well you can see that right there. That is our front output. That's our front speaker output. And that plugs into there, which means the other one, get this where you can see it a little bit easier on the video. There we go. There's the black one. That's our rear speaker output. So we plug that in. This is just a two-speaker system, but we have our rear main run, so we have audio signal into the back if we want to add it. We also have audio signal to the back through stock Harley wiring for if they add a tour pack harness or whatever there. And we've got our front one. So I take these, I like to push a little bit of excess back in here, just so we're not pulling on those connections. We have this stock Harley bundle. So that is what we are going to take this excess, kind of bundle this up here. Like so. So there's our excess, there's our wire. That's where we're going to zip tie these to. Another wire around, make sure we've got the Harley wire. Make sure we've got our inputs and outputs, or our outputs and our rear main. Pull that tight. Now we've got all that wire management is in place. Plenty of room for the steering to articulate. So now we have our DSP. The only two connections on our DSP we're concerned with is this large 20-pin connection and then the 16-pin, okay? Which you'll find line up with this connection. The little bump, there's our lock. So what we want to do here, very small pins. We kind of want to go here, just wiggle, wiggle until they connect. Just make sure it's a tight connection, but we don't want to force it. We want to take it nice and easy so we don't bend any pins or have any connection issues. 16 pin does the same thing. This connects in. Boom, done. These are for different, more custom applications. They're for other channels within the DSP, so we're not going to really be worried about those. Take this. Slide right in here. In between those two bundles. Yeah, it's going to just give them a little whatever. There we go. That's going to slide right up in there like that. Well, their waterproof connections were underneath the radio and the amp. This gives us plenty of room for our headlight to come in. No need to zip tie this to anything. It's not going in. Once that headlight comes in, it's got no room to move. So that's what moves it. Okay. Everything's up in here and bundled. So now we're ready to put the speakers in our pods and actually play the two-speaker system. We've got our amp installed. We got our wire management done. So basically now we just need to install speakers. So the first thing we want to do is take the old speaker out. It is put in with 4 T25 screws. So take T25, take these screws out. The speaker will then come out. Disconnect said speaker. Use it as a paperweight. Hold down 3 pieces of paper, not 4. Harley does not matter necessarily the colors, but Harley uses the small connector is always your positive. The large connector is always your negative. We emulate that in all our harnesses. So all our speaker connections, your small connector is going to be your positive, your large connector is going to be your negative. Very often, especially with the negative, the spade on the Harley speaker is thicker. So when you go to put it on one of the aftermarket speakers, it may seem a little loose. Very simple fix. Take a pair of your flush cuts. And just crimp this down a little bit. We don't have to mash it, but just crimp it down. You go to put it on the speaker, if it's a little loose, pull it off, crimp it a little bit tighter. You'll be fine. Now, Road Glide. Because of the Road Glide pod configuration with our full magneted speaker, we need to port this pod to give it space for that magnet. It needs just a little bit of space. In your kit, you will find a template that basically uses this channel and this. You can stick it right on there. Shows you where to drill the hole. What I like to do is 2 5/8 hole. I come in here using this edge right here and this edge here as my guideline. I try to say about 1/8 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. So kind of bring this, look down, about 1/8 of an inch. Now, once you grab, that was in forward, back this thing up. Keep it in reverse. It doesn't grab, won't torque your hand as hard. Now we can install our speaker. When you look at this, here's where our 4 screws go, and we have a little post here. This is basically a clocking post. Make sure we're turning the speaker in the right position. If you notice on our speakers, all our speakers have an A and a B. This is a center mounted tweeter, so it doesn't really make as much of an effect if we have one of our bridge tweeters. It's on a quarter mount or a corner mount. We typically mount that tweeter to the upper outside, okay? This will be against the bike, so this would be the outside, so we normally put it in this location. But we want to make sure that our mounting tab, in this case A, falls on that. That allows this to sit down. If you don't mount it there, you'll end up with a gap. Your speaker won't seal to your pod as good. All right, so red, small connectors are positive. Nice, good, tight connection there. Same thing with the negative. Nice, good, tight connections. We don't have to worry about that coming undone. Then we're going to mount this speaker into the place. Again, our locating tab, A. Boom. Right into place. Instead of using the speaker's screws, we provide you speaker screws. We want to use these a little bit longer. High, low, a little more aggressive. They hold the heavier speaker in better. I typically will kind of start all 4. Nice and easy. Now let's just give a visual inspection, make sure we got a good seal all the way around. If you notice when I did it, I try to keep my hand or something to the inside so that if we slip, we don't pierce our rubber surround. Once you do that, we're buying a new speaker. That pod is ready to be put back on the bike. We're basically going to do the exact same thing with the pod for the other side. Put the negative down. All right, again with our port, again, kind of this line right here and this. We want about an 1/8 inch. Plastic out of there. Now, for our next speaker. Positive. Negative. Nice, tight, no need to crimp that any further. Minding our mounting tab. The other side was A, so this will be B. Run our 4 screws in there. Decent visual inspection, and we've got a mounted speaker. Start these by hand. Then just a nice visual, make sure we're tight, everything's sitting down. Another reason I'm doing this, if you miss this tab, you'll see it. You'll see that bow there and know that, hey, we got to hit that tab, or excuse me, that tab. But there, good and tight, we're ready to put these back on the bike. So now we're getting ready to put we got our speaker mounted, we've got our amp, all our wiring's done. We're going to time to put our pod back into place. Sometimes it's easier, you got a little more space to kind of grab this little push connector here, get it put in. Then I always start with these top 2. Get them lined up. Just hand tight. We don't need any tighter than that, okay? Then let's go ahead and plug our speaker in. So we took that off. That's back on. Our speaker's plugged in. We got those 2 done. Our pod's in here is not falling out. We got these hand tight. They're nice and loose. Gives us a little bit of room into play. I like to start with this one here. Make sure it's lined up. Get that one started. Then come over to your next one. Once we get that, we can make things tight. This 5th screw has a much larger hole, so it basically takes up for that adjustment. If you come in, tighten this one up, this one, come up here, tighten these top 2. Kind of locks that pod into place. We've noticed a lot of times of putting these things back together, when we put this front vent back on, sometimes there's a little bit of a gap here. So if you wait to do this 5th screw last, come over here, get it started. Before you tighten it up, just put some backwards pressure on this. Tighten that screw up. That helps alleviate that gap that occurs right along this edge when you put that vent back into place. Just looks a lot neater. It's not present on old road glides, but it does happen enough. Our other pod, again, same concept, right? Let's go ahead and get this push clip there put in. Let's go ahead, because these tolerances are kind of tight in here. Get our speaker hooked up. Now, we can get these 2 started while we're up here at the top. Let's go ahead and run our GPS antenna. All right, so now everything that we kind of unplugged to get the pod off, plug back in. We got these 2 done. And then we're going to basically repeat the same order we did on the other side. We're going to get this one started right here. Then we're going to come over to this one. Once we got this one started, we can go ahead and tighten. Come up here to the top. Tighten those. Now we can come to this last one up here on this top. It's a little bit bigger. So we got a little more room for error. Get it started. Push this in. And tighten that down. And that'll help us from having a gap up the top. So at this point, we have one more module we're going to put back on the bike, and then we are actually going to be ready to listen to it. So now we need to put a module in here that we took out. 2 little 3/8 nuts at the top. Get them put on. Tighten. We need to put our speaker back in that little clip that's on the bottom of this unit. We need to plug this back in over here. And now that is replaced. So now we just need to do our headlight. While we are here, these 2 that were on that bracket in the front, we're just gonna tuck them right into this cubby on that side. And we've got plenty of room for our headlight. So now we can put our headlight in and we're ready. But before we do that, we're gonna go ahead and test our system. So we're gonna fire this 2-speaker up, make sure that everything's working. That way, before we put the headlight in. So that way, if we need to make an adjustment or need to check a connection or fitting, we're still open to do that. So now we're gonna flash the bike. So we take this bottom plug, take our cover off. This is the plug from our Techno Research. We're gonna plug that in. We're gonna turn the bike on. So now once we're there, we're gonna come to our Techno Research or Alaris single-use tool, whichever one you're using. We're gonna be in the infotainment radio. This is a GTS radio, so it does have CarPlay and Android Auto capabilities. So we're gonna go down here to Outputs and Nav. We're gonna click on that. And then once we click on that, we're going to come down here where it says BT Phone WIM CarPlay. Right? We click on that. We want to do WIM. We click on WIM. And then we click on the Enable. And OK. We're setting. And we passed. Now, we still have to flash it, so there's no need to turn this off right at this time. We're going to come back up here to our drop-down box on this side, and we're going to pick Speaker Configuration. Once we click that, we go to this top drop-down or top box, and find our Sounds. Click on Sounds. We only have one flash. So this is for all our 14 and up models. We click on it, and we click on this little button here. Again, we're setting, and we've passed. So now we can click OK. We're basically done there. We can go ahead and turn our bike off, which will let it reboot, kind of like after you do an update to the computer. We can unplug here, plug our cap back in, and that is it for our flash. All right. We're going to go ahead and listen to our system. Let's go ahead and listen to it in accessories. So go all the way over. That way we're not supplying power to the headlight and all that. It's just a little easier on the battery for us. So we're going to listen to the radio, give it just a test, make sure we got our 2-speaker up and working. So there's on. Let's go ahead and go to the accessories. A little bit easier on the battery. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at our Ultra Tour Pack, or anything with, the stock Tour Pack. Easiest way to do this, get the lid, let's get it kind of out of our way. I find it much easier to work on the kickstand side of the bike on the low side. I find I'm not bent over as much, it's a little bit easier on my back. So as with everything else, first thing we want to do is take these stock screws out. These stock screws are a T10, which is a small Torx. They come right out. There's our Grille. We will not be reusing these screws. When you look at this speaker, much lighter. Our speaker is going to be much heavier, and we are not going to be able to reuse stock screws, as well as these little rubber well nuts. They don't work either. So take a screwdriver or whatever, let's get them out. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, just to repeat, T10. All right, we're going to take our cover off, screws, remove our speaker, unplug it. Again, these little rubber well nuts will not hold the weight of the new speaker we're getting ready to put in here. So pop them out, get them out of the way. In your Grille kit, you will find a multitude of hardware. First thing we want to find are these little clips here, okay? These are going to take place of those plastic well nuts. So we're going to slide these in, just like so. Do the same thing for the other side. Now, again, Harley connection. So small connectors are positive, large connectors are negative. Just as we did with our pod speakers, we want to kind of crimp this negative one down just a little bit. We get a nice tight connection. If you forget, when you hook up your speaker, if it feels loose, just pull it off, tighten it down a little bit, you'll be just fine. The next thing we want to do, we want to cover this metal connection. Our speakers are deeper, so when we plug them in, depending on how it gets clocked, we want to make sure that none of this metal is making contact with anything else in here. So, running some quick shrink wrap over it works very well if you want to use electrical tape. A more than acceptable method for this. But I have the shrink wrap here. We just want to get the majority of this connection covered. Okay, so we have our heat shrink on. We got our well nuts in place. In your Grille kit, you will find these well nuts. You will find a multitude of screws. You have a machine screw, a long machine screw. You will have a shorter machine screw. You will have a long wood style screw and a shorter one. All depends on what we're doing. With these are machine screw finish, and we are using a full magneted speaker. So we are going to be using our TPLS 20 spacer, which then basically is going to require us using the longer screw. So the easiest way to do this, so large connector is our negative. Nice, tight, good. Then small connectors are positive. Again, nice, good, tight connection. This is a center-mounted tweeter. So basically, it's going to go in here, no matter how we spin it, the aesthetic is the same. If you are using one of our iron 65s or our bridge-mounted tweeter, where we have the tweeter sits up here in this corner, we clock this to the inside corner. So that tweeter would sit right here. Where this side has enough excess, we could actually spin that around. This side is much shorter. Our feed in is much shorter, so we need to clock it to the upper inside corner. Put our Grille covers on. I typically start with the top two. Put the speaker into place. And to make sure we've got those lined up. And we get these started into those well nuts. Keep them loose. If you tighten them up too much, you won't have enough play to line up the bottoms. So now we got all four started, almost like doing lug nuts on a tire. Just kind of come around, slowly tighten them up. And that speaker is mounted. So, other side, go ahead and put your spacer ring on first. Then you can connect that speaker up. Line our holes up here. Put our Grille on. Soundz logo at the bottom. Go ahead and let's put our top two screws in. Get those set. and we're going to get them started. Not pulled tight, because we want to get a little bit of wiggle room if we need it. Get these bottom ones started, okay? Now that one pulled in nice. This one up a little bit. So, rear tour pack speakers for your Ultra with the stock Harley wiring back there to them. That's it. We're done. We've now just taken your 4-speaker or your 2-speaker system and turned it into a 4. So at this point, we're good to listen to it. And let's see what our 4-speaker system sounds like. So we're going to start with doing our lower add-ons. We start with our lower fairing harness. Again, as we've done in other videos, I got this color-coded basically just so you a little easier visually to see how we're routing it. With the lowers, a lot of times, if this is a true add-on, they are easier to reach with the tank off. If you're doing the initial install and just multiple speakers, you'll already have that off because you've run your power and rear main. So we're going to basically run the 4-pin side of this connector, same place we did with the power and the rear main. This gets this end of it up into our fairing. Once we get this kind of pulled through, what we want, when you look at this, the ends are labeled. We have one just labeled clutch side, one that's labeled brake side. So we're going to take our brake side, because we are currently on our clutch side. So we're going to pass this over these lines and just kind of push this through to the other side. So now we've kind of got that over to this side. We have a connection here. So if you're doing this on a set of non-water-cooled lowers, and you're one of those riders that likes to take your lowers off in the summer, you can literally disconnect these, and you can take your lowers off, and you still have this. It's impossible to plug them up back on the wrong side the way the pins work. So anyway, we want to take this connection. We're going above this line again. We have a little kind of a crevice where this portion of the frame comes into our down tubes, and that's where we want to set this connector, okay? So we kind of get this shoved up into the front here like so. That gets us up almost inside this neck here. Nice, very water resistant area. And then we're going to zip tie this connection, this hose, we're going to try that in place to this hose right here, okay? So now we've got that done, we can kind of pull our excess up, and we want to run another zip tie around this bundle, very close to the end of this trough. Okay, so we do that. Get this tucked in behind the Harley factory wire. But now we've got that, so we're zip tied here, we're zip tied here. There's no chance. Here is our tank mounting bolt. So we're staying behind it, and we're keeping it where it's going to stay out of our way. So then we can just take our flush cuts, do away with the extra of the zip ties. And that gets our basic routing of that wire done. Now, here is our clutch side wire. We're going to bring this back around here. And here's our water cooling tube. So we're basically going to follow it down. That way we don't have to drill any holes in our lowers or the lower fairing speaker pod. And we're on a zip tie right here. So now, got this ready to go. Removing this cover, putting our speaker pod cover on, and mounting our speaker. So now, we're going to go over the removal of our old lower front. These are just pressure clips, so kind of get a little screwdriver in here. They'll pop right out. While you've got this out, we need one of these white plastic pressure clips to put onto our lower. So we'll need one of those. Easy enough to just go ahead and take it off of that while you've got it out. We're going to set that down for when we get the new pod ready to go in. So now, if you've got a Harley lower, we've got a nut in here that holds this back cap on, and that's a 7/16. Most of your aftermarket are 10 millimeter. But when you look in the back, here, we've got a little 7/16 bolt. So we take that one out, and that allows this cap to come off the back side. Now be careful when you take this off, there's a washer that goes on the outside. So when you pull that out, it may fall on the ground. You gotta locate it so you can keep it with your stuff. I typically check that nut and just kind of set it back on there so we have it when we're ready to put this back on, which will be the last thing we do once we're done with the install. There are 3 bolts around the backside as well as some other bolts. So first, this bracket here is kind of what holds the lower onto the bar. We got this, and there's one at the bottom. This one has to come off. The one on the bottom does not. Again, our 7/16 for OEM Harley stuff. Many of the aftermarkets are the 10 millimeter. You get that and that bracket off. Now this thing is actually loose in here, okay? What is holding our front, basically cover of our lower that we need to remove so we can put our speaker pod is held in by a screw here, and then there's one right behind where this bar is, okay? So what we have found, and these are T25, kind of take those 2 out with it there. Now, to get to this one, it's a little harder to reach. What we want to do, we're going to put some pressure here and here. Basically get this lower. Much easier with the tank off. We have a little bit more space, but it'll flex. We're not going to get this lower completely off without actually undoing our water coolant lines, which to prevent air getting in the system and this, that, and the other is a much easier way to do that. So we get that kind of pushed out where we can get to this one. We are ready to remove this. This is all pretty much loose. There are a couple pressure clips that push this together, but no screws anymore, okay? Kind of give a nice little firm pull. Don't pull too far. Your vent controller, which opens and closes this vent, we kind of need to get here. And is right here. Basically kind of pinched the top of it. That bar comes right out. So the way these are, they just kind of pressure fit in there. So if you reach in there and pinch them together, it'll pop right out. We do need to take this assembly loose because we're going to need to add it to our new speaker pod lower. Again, it's a T25, and that comes loose. Now we are done with this piece. We are ready to prep and get ready to install our new 6.5-inch speaker lower. In the kit, you get your lower, you get this foam piece. This foam piece sits right in here like this. And this basically just tries to help seal the gap between the lower and this portion where the air intake is for the water cool. Just peel this back. Make sure we got a good clean surface here. And stick that on. Okay. Now, if you remember, when we took the original cover off, I had you pull one of the white pressure clips. That goes onto this post right here. So that just, boom, clips into place. Perfect. Now, we need to add our vent control arm. So we want, when you're doing this, we want this arm to be to the back side, more open side of our lower. When you look at the knob, obviously bolts, that goes towards the front. So it sits in there like this. So the long, kind of at an angle, it angles up towards the front. That goes there. We go ahead and just reuse the factory screw because this is all still factory. It's T25, and tighten that up. What we want to do, make sure that both stay straight. As we're tightening it, we want to make sure we don't want too much slop, we don't want too much wobble, but if we tighten it down too much, it'll make it real hard for you to open and shut your vents. So there we go, that's pretty good. So now, we are ready to install this lower onto here. We've already zip tied our speaker feed to our intake line. We're just going to bring this kind of out the hole. That way we know we have it in the pod. We've got the little notch here. So that's where our speaker feed and the water intake is going to go, okay? This is much easier with the tank off, but bring it, get that out of the way so you can see. Line the vent rod. Boom. It's clipped in place. So now, we're going to get the line and the speaker feed kind of put in that notch where that goes. Once we have that, look here, we got the clip we added. We have the receiver right here. So we want to line that up and put it in. That gets us really close. Now, in your lower kit, with them, you will have some high-low 3/4 inch screws. These are basically the same thing as the screws we use to put into, attach our speakers to our speaker pods. Okay, so putting our screws across the back, front fairing speaker pod screws. We are kind of going in here, this gets a little bit, if you've got a little bit of strip caulk or something you can kind of put on the end of your Phillips, kind of helps that screw hold on there, makes it easier to get lined up here, okay? So, when you're coming in this hole, once we got it started, we make sure we're lined up with the mounting boss of our lower. And all we want to do is get 2-3 threads in here, get it started. We want to keep this loose till we get to our final one on the inside. So, I like to get these two. Started. Now, we basically kind of got this pod is holding in place. Now, the same thing we did when we removed the factory lower, we're going to do again to get this screw here. Kind of some down and inward pressure. Gets this loose where we have access. Put our screw on. Let's make sure we're in the hole. Kind of check on the inside, make sure you're lined up with that mounting boss. And now, so this is our third and final one. So we want to double check our lines coming in, make sure that they're in the notch for them and we're not pinching any of that and that they're sitting right. But we will go ahead and tighten this one up. And all we're trying to do is make sure that we close the gap between our lower and our speaker pod fairing. Okay, so now we got that one done. Personally, I like to go ahead and set this thing back in place. And then we've got that one tight. We go ahead and tighten this up. And all we need is to get plastic against plastic. We don't want to over tighten because you can actually crack these lowers if you pull them too much. So we just need to get a decent seal where it looks good, it's lined up. Same thing with our last one. There we go. Nice and tight. We got a good seal all the way around. So now that we have speaker pod mounted for the lowers, we've got a wire one in. We can go ahead and run this clip back on. Okay. So now it's good and tight. Our lower's good and tight. So we're going to go ahead and put our back cap on. We want to make sure that we got the back side of this assembly done before we put our speaker in place. Because once you put your speaker in place, you can't get to the bolt that holds this back cap on. Now remember, I said the washer stays on the cap. I mean, just upside down, but basically this will flip. And we have this little piece here. This slides into a slot right here on the side, okay? So what I have found, it's almost best to kind of come in at this angle this way, make sure that slots in. Slight pressure, kind of spread this out just a little bit. And you feel it when that bolt goes through the hole. So now this is in where it is. We just need to put the bolt on the inside. 7/16 nuts, it's a thunder nut, so it's not going to slide all the way down our ratchet. But this side, not so bad. This is fairly open in here. When we get to the other side, you'll see the water reservoir and this, that, and the other. So either put some strip caulk inside of your socket, or another thing you can do is just basically take a little chunk of paper towel, put it over the socket, then press fit your 7/16 in there, and it'll hold it where it won't fall out. So as you're trying to get this lined up with the screw, we're not losing this nut down in this lower all the time, okay? It just makes it a little bit easier. But get that lined up. Get that started. And just tight. Nice and snug. We don't need to, it's all plastic parts we're holding together here. So, there. Now, we are ready to install our speaker. Again, as I've said in other videos, but we're going to go over it again, we follow Harley. So, our small connector is our positive. The large connectors are negative. I'm not worried about the wire color. All our stuff, we mimic Harley. So small connector's always positive, the big connector's negative. We have a small spacer we're going to use just to give us, this side fits fairly well. The other side with the reservoir bumps us just a little bit. So we need a small 6mm spacer. Put that on our speaker. Hook our stuff up, red, so that's our positive. So small connector goes to the positive. Big connector goes to the negative. Okay, nice tight connections, we're good to go. If you've watched the top one, we don't have to worry about a clocking tab on these. This speaker is a center mounted tweeter, so you can't really clock it wrong. Doesn't really matter. We got plenty of play in our line, so we're not putting any excess there. If we had one of our bridge mounted tweeters where the tweeter kind of comes off the corner, we would be putting that to our top outside corner. So we'd want that tweeter to fit in this space here. And then obviously match on the other side. So, but this speaker, we don't have to worry about that. Soundz Grille, logo on the bottom. I typically start with the two top screws. You can see we're going to, here and here, the holes we're going to be mounting to. So I kind of start with the top because I got better vision up here. You can kind of feel when they clip into place, when they hit that little mounting boss divot. Get these started. We don't want to tighten them down all the way until we know we have all four of them started. So there, move down to our bottom here. Now, tighten them all up. This portion right here is where we have the biggest advantage with the tank off. If the tank was on, we'd have to almost get a right angle or a small ratchet with the Phillips tip and hand ratchet these screws into place because we don't have the clearance with the tank on to get a full screw gun in there. And there we go. That is mounted and done. So now we're on our other side. Again, I'm going to say it enough. Maybe we'll all remember it. Small connector, positive. Big connector, negative. Not worried about wire color here. Okay? We mimic Harley. So now we want to run this side of the bike. Always have our brake cable. We want to come in behind that cable. Get us behind the cable. Now we want to follow our intake line. Kind of down, and depending on where this clip sits, I kind of almost set it right down the middle of it. Put one zip tie there to hold that in place. That's that. And now, once we clip our excess with our flush cuts there, we are ready to remove this pod. All right. As with the other side, these are pressure fit on, so kind of get yourself a little purchase point there. Again, we're going to need one of the white clips to put onto our new speaker pod. So we take that off. Now again, we have one 7/16 bolt in the back. This side is a lot more, it's kind of way back in there. This is where the reservoir is a little bit tighter when we're taking that off. And this lets us take the back cap off, just like the other side. Again, you got the washer that stays on the inside, so we want to leave that there. I always got to put the nut back here, that way I don't lose it. But we'll set this aside, so we're ready to put things back together. Now we'll come around to the back side and finish taking this apart and our lower loose. As with the other side, 2 screws here. We're going to take these off. And again, just to kind of repeat myself, OEM Harley, typically 7/16. Aftermarket, more often than not, are your 10 millimeters. Them aside and we're ready to go back on. So we got 3 screws that hold this pod on. 1, 2, and the third one is behind our bar here. So I kind of take these out with the lower in its normal position. Take those out. Now, the same as what we did with the other side. A little bit of pressure. Nice and easy. Get this loose where we have access to this hole here. That screw out. Our pod is now loose. So go back to the front to finish taking it off. Now we're ready to take our pod off. Again, like I said, all our attachment screws are loose. So these are basically just pressure clips. Now, got those 2 clips loose. We have our water line here. Again, now we need to kind of reach in here, get those 2 little tabs to take our vent control arm loose. That's loose. So one thing we kind of, there we go. So, and again, our vent control arm, just got those 2 tabs. You squeeze that and it'll come right out. Now, again, same as the other side, we are going to reuse this vent control arm piece. T25 screw. Take it loose. Let's go ahead and add our vent control arm to our new pod. We want the arm on the back side. Again, with this extra, this got a little vent up. This is actually going to point front towards the rider. And basically, we tighten this to ease of operation. That's a little stiff. So, back her out a little, about a quarter turn. There we go. Tight, not too loose, but functions easily. So, you can actually move it while you're riding down the road. We have our foam, which basically seals our speaker pod here with our air intake here. So, take tape off, cover off. Nice good clean surface on the inside, and we're going to mount that right along here. So that kind of helps seal our gap here, but allows the air to flow to let the water cool do its job. The little white clip we took off at the very beginning goes right here on this portion of our pod. So now we're ready to put this into place. I tend to like to let our feet kind of go through the speaker hole there, that we know it's in place. First thing we're going to do way here is slide our vent control arm up in. Clip, good. So now get the pod laid up. Get our vent line into the little hole provided in the speaker pod for it. Make sure we're not pinching the water line or our speaker feed. Next thing is to line this clip up and get it in its receiver right here. So, and that gives us kind of a rough fit. We'll come over here and actually attach it to lower. So we're going to kind of, same thing on the other side. Got this in place. These two are easily accessible. We're going to have to move the whole lower to get this inner one. But we've got this sitting where we want it. Let's go ahead and line these up. Get them started, leave it loose. You know, that way you got room to move and make sure we get that back one lined up. Just get a couple threads that we're holding it in place. Same thing with our top screw here. All right, now, again, we're going to slide this lower out to give us access here. There we go. Now we got it lined up. So, since we're on the inside, we're going to go ahead and tighten this one up. Basically, we just need it till we get plastic on plastic. Not too tight, enough where it doesn't move. Now we can put that back into place. We're just going to tighten the ones that are already in here up. So there, nice and tight. Good reveals. We're good to go there. Reattach our lower to the crash bar with this bracket. Again, just to repeat myself, OEM 7/16, aftermarket, more than likely is going to be your 10 mil. Nice and tight, solid, no rattle. Again, before we put our speaker in, we want to make sure we have this end cap on, because you won't be able to reach this nut with the speaker in place. So, washer stays on the cap side, so the outside. Again, we have this tab here, which lines up in a little slot right here. So the easiest way to get this to line up is kind of start on the outside, make sure you're in there. A little bit of pressure, kind of spreading this till that nut goes in the hole, nice and tight. We're ready to put our nut on from the inside. We got this in. Again, it's got a fender on it to keep it from sliding down in there, but a little bit of strip caulk, something to hold in place so it won't fall out. This is the side that if you kind of lose that screw, you're almost having to take it apart to find it again, or just find another 7/16 nut to put on it. So that was a little bit, need a little more visual with it. And sometimes I have found it's almost easier to kind of get this in here by hand, so you can at least get it started. Make sure you've got it lined up and the threads on it right. Good and tight, no rattles. We're good to go. I typically, because we're going to put a speaker in here, this vent tube, I basically just slide to the outside of that reservoir. And that gives us basically another few millimeters of depth for the magnet on that speaker. So here's where we are stock. And literally just slide it to the side. So, as we discussed on the other side, we use a little 6mm spacer just to give our magnet clearance for this reservoir that's in here. Again, to repeat myself, center mounted tweeter. So the clocking doesn't matter. The speaker is going to perform the same, look the same no matter what. If you're using one of our bridge mounted tweeter speakers, that we want that bridge in this upper outer corner when we're installing the speaker. Small connectors are positive, big connectors are negative. We're not worried about the wire color here. So, small connector to our positive terminal on the speaker, big connector to the negative, nice and tight, good connection. Get our speaker grill, logo at the bottom. Just like the other side, I tend to start with top two, get them in place. Get our wire tucked in here. All right, so we're good and started. Let's get all four of them started before we tighten these down. Come around and slowly tighten them. And there we go. Nice solid speaker mount. So we have now completed the speaker pods and mounting the speaker in our lower fairing add-on. So the only thing left to do here before we can play this is to go ahead and make the connection up front, and then we'll be able to listen to this system. Here's our lower fairing harness that we ran up through here. So as an add-on, I'm going to slide our DSP kind of out of the way. When we did the initial front install, we hooked the front and rears up to the front and rear outputs of the amp, and we had our rear main attacked or plugged into the rear add-on. So that leaves us one plug that's left, which is our front add-on. So we just very simply plug that in. We're going to tuck this back up in here. And then we're going to put our excess against the same bundle that we did at the beginning and run a zip tie around that. So we have this here. Run a zip tie around this bundle. And we will get this wire secured into place with all the others on that side there. Cut our excess. Now, we just need to tuck our DSP back up in between those two bundles, just like in our original install. And there we go. We're ready to put our headlight in, but before we do that, again, we'll go ahead and listen to this now as a 6-speaker ultra setup.
Thank God for the man who put it in my
Okay, so we are done installing our system, so we're ready for reassembly of the bike. We'll start with our gas tank here. I tend to kind of like start from the back, kind of slowly work this thing up into place, and you'll see it sits right down. Make sure that we get the two tabs on the tank over the mounting bungs on the neck. Make sure we get them started. I kind of just put them in hand tight for now till we get all the bolts in place. So, and you may need to, as you're trying to thread these in by hand, they will and should thread in very easily. If you just need to wiggle the tank a little bit to make that happen for you, perfect. So then we've got those started. We're going to come down here to the back of the tank and get these back two started by hand. Now that we have that done, we will go ahead and tighten these up. Order does not really matter now that we've got them good and started. We know we're not going to cross thread anything. So, back. Now we'll put our extension on. So for our front bolt, unless you have a wobble extension or a articulating extension, you may be easier to just grab you a 1/2-inch ratchet. Now that's tight. Well, we're on that side. We're going to go ahead and put our tank bolt cap on. When you look at the cap, the bottom, there's a longer side and a shorter side. So the longer side is our up. The shorter side is the lower side. These things literally, they're rubber, just fit right over the bolt. Now, when we took them off, we would just basically repeat the exact same thing on the other side with tightening that bolt and putting the cap back on. There we go. Good and tight. Again, our bolt cover. Now, our tank is secure. So now, we need to run our overflow. It goes down this side here. And we'll follow right down these lines that go in front of your passenger foot peg. If you remember from our take apart video, when we disassembled, there was a zip tie here. So we'll go ahead and replace that zip tie to hold those wires secure there. Hold them in place. They don't move against the exhaust or any other hot part and melt. Cut off our excess. We have our two plugs. These are very easy. Run them under like they were from factory. This Harley bundle here. Gray. Plugs into the gray connector. Black plugs into the black connector. And there we go. Now the only thing we have left is this little tube here. It's just pressure fit. No hose clamp. There we go. We are back together. We have one thing that we don't want to forget, which is our fuel supply. So then we just need to, and it is just like doing an airline. Lift up on the coupling, press it in, and make sure it clicks back down on it, and it's secure. Now our fuel's in place, our tank is in place. We are ready to move on to our seat. Okay, so now we're moving on to our seat. We're going to go ahead and open our tour pack. And we're going to get this piece kind of up and out of our way. We want to start from the back. With this up a little bit. I tend to keep my hand on the end of this mounting nub just so we don't No attempt to scratch any paint on the back of your tour pack. Start from the back. We want to slide this thing forward. Lift here. Make sure that we've caught basically what we have. So we have this slot that matches up with this. So we're doing this, starting at the back. There it is. You lift up. Okay, we're caught. We're all the way up. We should be able to set this back down. Again, this one's a nice, easy thumb screw. If it's stock Harley, it'll have a number 3 tip Phillips. Put that screw in place. And our seat is on. I will say that if you've got a heated seat, make sure you make that connection before putting the seat into this position. Maybe you plug your heated seat back in. If you've got an aftermarket seat, some of the Mustangs and some of the other seats, they're a little bit stiffer. So if you're having trouble getting this lined up, sometimes just a little bit of bump here, we'll get that to line up and move forward where we need it to be. But there it is, seat's in place. So now we can shut our tour pack and move on to replacing our front fairing. We're up here to put our front end back together, which will start with the headlight. Want to make sure we have our headlight plugged in. And there's a little nut here on the back side of this headlight. That kind of goes right in this hole here. So sometimes it's kind of easier to tilt this from the back. All right. Make sure we get the tabs. This one on the light that goes into our, kind of pulls our vent into place. Make sure we line those up. Come down here. There we go. All right. Now, this one's still lined up good. Let's push that one back in. Upper bolts. Go. Put that good and tight. Same at the bottom. So now our headlight's back in place. We're getting ready to put our fairing cover back on. Before we do so, we want to have 2 little pads of sound deadener provided in your kit. This serves 2 purposes. We want to take these old stock Harley stays out. See how well they hold. I'll take those off. Take a microfiber, kind of clean up our surface a little bit here around this turn signal wire. An adhesive promoter. Just going to give it a quick will help these stay in place. Now these are going to kind of serve 2 purposes for us. The first is, if you remember from our front install, we ported those pods to make room for the magnet. So we want to make sure we put it right over this turn signal wire. Okay, bring this down. That will basically keep this from flapping and rattling up against the plastic as you're playing your stereo going down the road. It will also, when we put this on, kind of goes over that hole we ported. Kind of makes it seals that up a little bit better and will improve some of the mid-bass response in that front fairing speaker. So, and that is it. Once that's in place, we're good to slide this up onto our fairing. Take this, we're going to move over to the bike. Boom. Now, we have some little clocking fins on the front edge of this. As I push this back, I like to kind of make sure they're up and in place. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take the T25 that came from inside this fairing grill and put it in its place. I just hand tighten these. Trying to get them up hand tight. to hold this fairing in place. We don't want to pull them tight, so we make sure we have everything else lined up. But by doing these two, it lets us be able to walk away, get our other product, get it put into place, get our screws, and we don't have to be concerned with this falling off. Now, if you remember, make sure, before we go any further, this is when we are going to reconnect our turn signal wires. Oh, so basically we get this on place, make sure we're kind of tight here, 2 bolts in, plug in our turn signal wires. Now we are ready to put our vent back in. As I said, when they come off, they are basically, it is held on place just initially, just these 2 pressure clips. So come in, kind of bottom down. It's a little bit of a reveal here that goes under this edge of the inner fairing. Get that lined up. Now we're in place. So now we've got that good. So we want to make sure we have these lined up. And that's the reason we keep this loose, because it lets us have a little better manipulation to get this in place. You should be able to put these in by hand, get them started by hand. It's a very fine thread. If you get them cross-threaded, we have issues. So we take your time, make sure that they go in by hand, go in very easily. Get them cross-threaded, you can actually spin that brass ferrule inside of there and you'll have a hard time ever getting it tight, or you'll get it tight and then you need to take it off to do something or check something and it's cross-threaded in that brass ferrule, which will cause you issues later down the road. So we basically do the other side here. All right, now we got the screws started. We got the trims in place. We can go ahead and put our windshield on. This windshield has slots, so we can actually start our screws, get them in place, and then put our windshield on. If this was a solid piece and it was just a hole, we would have put our windshield in place and then put our screws in. This works very nice. Now that is not going anywhere. We can kind of take our 1/8 inch Allen, snug these up a little bit, get them. We don't need to apply major pressure at this point, but get it where we're not going to lose our windshield. Okay. Now, we have a T25 and a 3/16 still to do on each side. So we have our 3/16, which goes in the back of our turn signal light here. We want to get that started. We don't want to pull it tight until we get our T25, the bottom of our little willy wing. Now, once we get this started, everything on this side is in. So we can go ahead and tighten that up. We can tighten that up. We will switch to our 3/16. Tighten that one up. Now we'll repeat the process on the other side. Now, we've got everything tight. We can come back and finish tightening these. So now we are pretty much back together. We have one thing missing. In this, you will have new grills provided in your kit. Now the only thing we got left to do is put our new grills in. With our grills, we basically want to make sure that this rubber surround is sitting where it needs to be sitting. Okay? Remember when we took them off, we got the 2 pressure clips and then we got this little L clip, okay? So the L clip goes to the outside. We kind of put it into place first and then line up our pressure clips, press. Grill is in place. Repeat process on the other side. Again, start from the outside. Make sure those clip. Done. We have now successfully completed what ended up being a 6-speaker ultra setup.